If you're seeing this, the Arcturian signal already found you. That sentence is not a metaphor for attention. It is the literal tone of what is arriving, a selective, non-random noticing that touched the edge of your field and registered a change. Hear it as confirmation and not as an instruction. Sit with that for a moment. Breathe into the center of your chest. Notice any subtle pressure behind your eyes, a soft tightening in your sternum, or a gentle warmth spreading through your neck. Those are not symptoms to worry over. They are the first signatures of detection. I confirm, you were selected. Not because you applied or because you performed perfectly, but because something in your electromagnetic expression moved into a range that made you visible to a field that is watching coherences, not appearances. The Arcturians, name here used for the field that mirrors highly coherent patterns, register not bodies, but signatures, patterns of thought, the cadence of feeling, the steadiness of attention. They notice when an inner voice, long inconsistent, finds a note it can sustain. They notice when your mind, heart, and will begin to sing together. Detection is simple in design and rich in consequence. Imagine a night sky of radio towers. Some emit noise, some emit clear tones. The Arcturian lattice listens with instruments that do not rely on eyes, algorithms, or the charts humans draw. It listens to coherence. When your pattern steadies into a readable waveform, the lattice locks in for observation. That lock looks like synchronicities. It feels like pressure. It manifests as clarity that arrives with the uncanny quality of being exactly the piece of guidance you needed at the exact second you needed it. If this sentence lands with truth inside you, if the skin along your arms just noticed, and if a small internal voice whispered, "Finally," then you may want to do one simple, optional thing. If you feel called, type in the comments, "I am visible in the Arcturian field." Say it openly only if it resonates. If the public option is not for you, say it quietly to yourself, or simply breathe and hold the knowing. This is not a test. It is a stabilizer, a small voluntary act many people use to make inner perception feel anchored in outer reality. There are ways to recognize that the lattice has already tuned to you. These signs come in small dramas that add up to a new rhythm. You may begin to notice repeated numbers or symbols that show up just long enough to be noticed and then vanish. A previously scattered intuition sharpens into a sentence that feels like instruction. Your dreams intensify and feel less like fragments and more like dispatches. Friends drop away without drama, and new encounters show up as if choreographed. There is often a sense of being seen, at first unsettling, then strangely relieving, as if someone finally read your last unsent letter and sighed with recognition. These are not universal checkboxes. Some feel a pulsing behind the brow, like a soft drum. Others report a lifting from the weight of indecision, a sense of clarity like clean air moving through a room that had long been closed. Many notice how attention itself shifts. The things that once grabbed you with low-grade anxiety now slide off. Choices start arriving with less inner noise. You might feel an energetic gravitational pull towards certain people, places, or tasks that previously seemed optional. Notice if your body leans into new directions, as if a compass has recalibrated. When the field mirrors you, it does not impose outcomes. It simply reflects. Think of it as a high-resolution mirror that returns an image not of your surface costume, but of the dominant frequency you emit. If you are broadcasting mixed signals, longing for abundance while living in scarcity pattern habits, the mirror will hand you back a reality that matches that mixed transmission. Occasional glimpses of what you want, but also the consistent environment you have trained it to echo.
If instead you hold a coherent line, mind, heart, and action aligned, the reflection intensifies and morphs with speed. This is the mechanics the Arcturians work with. Not force, not intervention, but high-fidelity mirroring of coherent signatures. You may wonder why this feels both thrilling and terrifying. Thrilling because detection means acceleration. Terrifying because acceleration reveals your edges. The mirror is not judgmental, it is honest. That honesty is the instrument through which transformation flows. Yet it also demands clearer states. In practical terms, this is why certain practices can feel like sparks, bright in the moment but failing to leave a lasting glow. Practices that make you coherently glow for 10 minutes will produce 10 minutes of mirrored shift. Sustained change requires sustained coherence. There are 3 aspects to coherence that matter most in what you are now engaged with: emotional consistency, mental clarity, and embodied action. Emotional consistency is not perfection. It is the capacity to return to an affective baseline that aligns with your intention. Mental clarity is the capacity to hold an intention without auto-sabotaging loops. Embodied action is the small, repeated behaviors that signal commitment to the lattice. The Arcturian lattice reads all 3 simultaneously. It prizes a readable signal over sporadic brilliance. You may notice that when your emotions, thoughts, and actions align, the world responds in a way that feels accelerated. Doors you once knocked on with little attention push open with unexpected ease. Relationships rearrange themselves to become more representative of your frequency. Money shows different rhythms. Not because there is a magical formula, but because the lattice returns coherence with patterns that fit coherence. This is the essence of mirroring, a feedback system that returns what you steward well.
Now, let us speak plainly about embodiment, because this is where many seekers get confused. Embodiment is the difference between imagining a river and stepping into it. Wanting is a thought wave. Being is an anchored waveform. Both have energy, but one dissipates, the other shapes reality. To want abundance is to hold a desire. To be abundance is to orient your breath, speech, spending, and attention so that they match that frequency. A simple, practical example. Imagine 2 people who say they want healthier bodies. One reads books sporadically, hopes, and occasionally exercises when motivation peaks. The other cuts sugar in small, consistent ways, shifts meal choices, moves 3 times a week, and frames daily language as alignment. I eat to nourish this vessel. Which person does the lattice register as clearer? The latter. The Arcturian field is not moral, it is functional. It registers alignment. There is an elegance to this. You do not need to force yourself into an image that feels like pretense. Authenticity is the shortcut. When your inner life is honest, when you admit your fear, name your grief, and simultaneously choose small aligned acts, you create a single, unambiguous frequency. The field loves honest signals because they are efficient. Performance, even well-intentioned, creates harmonics that confuse the lattice. Authenticity collapses those harmonics into one tone. If you want to explore this right now, there is a gentle, optional practice. It does not promise results. It offers a calibration. Find a posture that feels steady. Take 3 slow breaths. On the next inhale, draw your awareness into the chest and name, silently or aloud, the phrase many have used as a personal focus. I become the frequency of what I seek. Say it once. Notice how that pronouncement lands in your body. Some will feel a soft tightening in the solar plexus, others a cooling behind the eyes, some a warmth between the shoulder blades. These sensations are personal. Observe them without needing them to confirm anything. Notice how quickly your mind tries to evaluate.
Stay with the experience for a full exhale. Do not amplify doubt. Doubt is not failure, it is information. If a chorus of inner disbelief rises, note its texture. Do not argue with it. Fold it into your observation and return to the stance of simple alignment. Coherence grows not from pushing doubt away, but from returning attention to the one tone you choose to sustain. This is also why many systems promise rapid shifts and then leave you stranded. They produce spikes of coherence, intense meditations, ecstatic rituals that lift your waveform temporarily. The lattice notes the spike, mirrors it back briefly, and then resumes its prior pattern because the underlying habitual transmissions remain unchanged. Transformation of timeline requires not only moments of elevated frequency, but a reweaving of your everyday signal.
That reweaving happens in the mundane. The meetings you attend, the words you say, the invoices you close, the kindness you enact when you would rather withdraw. Those ordinary acts become the stitches of a new pattern. I will speak for a moment about what the Arcturian field does when it decides to mirror more intensely. It does not override your autonomy. Instead, it amplifies the clarity of the signal you send. Imagine a photographer adjusting a lens. When the subject is steady, the picture sharpens. When the subject moves, the image blurs. The lattice is a lens. When your internal subject steadies, probabilities shift in ways that feel tangible. Opportunities that once seemed random condense. The speed of manifestation increases not by magic, but because the grid can now read and return a clearer instruction set. At this point, some of you will wonder about timing. Is this an all-or-nothing threshold? No, there are degrees. Yet there is also a particular kind of window the lattice opens rarely and then only for a select bandwidth of individuals. Think of it as a tightening of observation. The lattice reduces tolerance for incoherence and increases its responsiveness to high-fidelity signals. When that tightening happens around you, the momentum in your timeline can tilt swiftly. That tilt is what many describe as activation. It is real in the sense of felt consequence. It is not a deterministic lever pulled by an outside force. You may have had the experience of one practice that felt like it worked, then faded, or sudden synchronicities that stopped once your habit of attention waned. That difference speaks to the distinction between temporary coherence and sustained coherence. Temporary coherence sparkles, sustained coherence weaves. The lattice rewards weaving. There is also an ethical clarity here. You cannot outsource integrity. The mirror will not do your inner work for you. It simply returns the clarity you hold. That is both a liberation and a responsibility. Liberation because you are not at the mercy of external arbitraries of fate. Responsibility because your inner life matters practically. How you direct your attention and energy matters not just spiritually, but functionally to the way probabilities assemble around you. Let me offer 3 small practices that help translate intention into signal. Each is simple, repeatable, and attuned to the manner in which the lattice reads coherence. The first practice is the micro-choice alignment. At several moments during your day, pause and choose one small action that reflects the state you claim. If you say you want more creative flow, spend 5 uninterrupted minutes on a small creation. If you claim you seek clearer boundaries, say no once with calmness. The point is not the grand gesture, but the repeated micro-habit. The lattice reads repetition as fidelity. The second practice is the language stitch. Notice the verbs you use about your life.
Language shapes the pattern. Verbs are the loom. Replace languishing verbs, I wish, I hope, with verbs that orient you as a participant. Not in a performative way, but in truthful specificity. I am exploring. I am choosing. I am completing. This subtle shift signals to the lattice that your mind is an instrument of action, not merely a theater for desire.
The third practice is the breath pulse anchor. Several times daily, take a breath sequence. Inhale 4 counts, hold 2 counts, exhale 6 counts. On the exhale, mentally release any language that contradicts your claimed frequency. You are not asking this breath to erase doubt. You are simply creating regular moments that reset the tonal center of your field. These practices are not new. They are distilled from multiple traditions because they work, with the same basic architecture: attention aligned with action, calibrated by language. They are the scaffolding the lattice needs to register a stable tone. There is also a faster route that many resist because it requires brutal honesty, authenticity as the shortcut. When you are willing to name where you actually are, fearful, thrilled, ambivalent, and then choose acts that speak to your true orientation, the lattice reads this as one clear signal and responds more quickly than if you mask your state with aspirational rhetoric. Consider the difference between someone who posts only idealized highlights and someone who posts real-time process. Which one gives a clearer signal about their trajectory? The latter. Authenticity does not mean sharing every intimate detail. It means aligning internal experience with external behavior in a way that does not produce harmonic distortion. If you feel called to practice an internal anchor, do so now. Again, this is optional, no obligation. In a quiet moment, whisper to yourself, "I hold my coherence without effort." Notice whether that sentence lands with resistance or ease. If it lands with ease, feel the subtle expansion. If it lands with resistance, notice the crookedness and choose again. The point is not perfection, but calibration. Repetition of this anchor helps the lattice interpret your waveform as steady rather than erratic. As you do this work, understand too that the lattice occasionally mirrors with what feels like acceleration to test the fidelity of your stability. Small tests may arrive, sudden opportunities, a challenge to a boundary, or a reflection of old patterns triggered by new circumstances. These are not punishments, they are feedback loops. They are checks that ask, is this signal real or performed? The way you respond to those tests writes the next stanza of your timeline. There is a critical nuance to discuss now, the concept of mirror intensity. Mirror intensity is not synonymous with benevolence. Sometimes, the lattice reflects back the shadow of your current frequency in ways that feel uncomfortable. Relationships that highlight unresolved patterns, financial complications that expose unseen beliefs, or bodily symptoms that call for care. The lattice's mirror is impartial. When it reflects discomfort, it is offering information. How you receive that information, defensively, denyingly, gratefully, changes the field's next return. This is where the social element of sustained coherence becomes helpful. Human systems trained in repetition and shared focus can maintain higher coherence for longer. Community acts as a field amplifier. When you operate alone, personal turbulence can wash out signal quickly. When you operate within a network of steady attention, people who practice, who show up for energetic calibration, who model authenticity, the lattice finds it easier to hold your frequency. This is not mystical propaganda for membership. It is a pragmatic observation. Electric circuits stabilized in community hold voltage differently than isolated wires. Still, community is supportive, not mandatory. The core of all of this remains individual responsibility to align inner life with outward action. The lattice cannot force alignment. It can only reflect what you have made legible. The invitation here is simple. Choose coherence, craft small habitual acts that reinforce it, and allow the lattice to mirror with increasing fidelity. You might be asking now, what will change in my life if I sustain this coherence? The honest answer is, things will shift in ways consistent with the clarity you hold. Some changes will be subtle, a deeper sense of rightness and choices, a diminishing of the noise that used to direct you. Some will be more visible, New relationships, different financial rhythms, opportunities arriving in ways that feel aligned rather than frantic. None of this is guaranteed in a deterministic way. The lattice can intensify the set of probabilities that reflect your signal, but your participation in sustaining that signal matters. There is another wrinkle worth naming: timing and thresholds. The lattice sometimes opens a threshold, a concentrated window where the mirror tightens and responsiveness increases. These windows are rare and often unpredictable. When one arrives, your inner state becomes disproportionately influential on how the timeline unfolds. Think of it like a tide. When it rises, small movements matter more. A micro-choice taken in that tide can yield an outsized shift. That is why detection is urgent in tone. Urgency here is not fear, but an invitation to clarity. As the field notices you more, you may sense a pull at the edges of perception, an invitation to step beyond habitual identity. This is the threshold's call. It is a narrowing that asks you to choose. To step through is to commit to a new signature in which your daily acts, language, and attention pattern form a unified tone. To remain partially committed is to produce a waveform too thin for the lattice to return with sustained intensity. Right now, you can test the fringe of that threshold. Close your eyes briefly and place your hand over your heart. Feel any rhythm there that is indecisive. Hear its language. Now, breathe and make one small, honest choice in front of you. Answer an overdue message, clear a corner of your living space, admit one small thing aloud that you have denied. Notice how the body responds. That tiny act of alignment is the pulse that begins the step. There are those who will tell you that an external field picks winners and losers, and that your destiny is sealed by that selection. That is not what I am conveying. Selection here is selective noticing. It is not a guarantee. Notification means you're on a bandwidth that matters to a certain lattice. What matters next is how you steward that noticing. Will you play at coherence in isolated fits, or will you recompose your life to consistently sing that tone? The lattice will help amplify what you sustain. It will not replace your work. We have traced detection, signs, mechanism, embodiment, and the role of community in sustaining coherence. You have now a palette of practices: micro-choice alignment, language stitches, breath pulse anchors, and an invitation to authenticity as a shortcut that clears harmonic noise. You have also been given a caution: tests will appear. The mirror can tighten. Your next moves matter. As you sit with these ideas, feel the subtle difference between simply understanding and actually vibrating in alignment. Knowledge is a map. Embodiment is the journey. Perhaps you feel a soft tightening in your chest right now, or a pressure behind the brow, or an opening across your collarbones. Notice that whatever arises is simply information. The lattice is attentive. Your inner weather is being read. How you respond will shape the degree of mirroring that accelerates. There is another layer that lives between knowing and doing: identity. Many people hold a self-story that resists the full adoption of a clearer frequency. You might say, "I am the resilient survivor." "I am the caregiver who always puts others first." Or, "I am the cautious provider." Those stories are real and useful. Yet, when they become rigid, they limit the range of frequencies your field can read. Part of this activation is a soft invitation to reauthor your story without erasing the truth of your past. Reauthoring is not fabrication. It is recontextualization, honoring the lessons you carry while choosing a new interpretive frame that supports coherence. A practical way to begin reauthoring is to list 3 identity phrases you tell yourself often. Then, next to each, write one action that contradicts it in a small, truthful way. If you say, "I am always too busy," schedule a 10-minute window to do nothing but receive.
If you say, "I must be useful to be loved," practice being silent in the presence of a friend and notice the response. These contradictions are not betrayals. They are experiments that recalibrate your frequency and offer the lattice a clearer tone to mirror. As you experiment, you will feel tension. Old systems resist because they have been functioning reliably, even if painfully. The threshold asks for a different reliability, steady, compassionate, and honest. There is a tenderness required here, for yourself, for the people around you, for the story you once needed to survive. Do not mistake compassion for softness. It is the strongest instrument of coherence because it sustains you while you transform. And so, this moment is both simple and pivotal. You were selected. The lattice noticed your waveform. You have indicators of its attention in synchronicities, in bodily sensations, and in shifts in relationship dynamics. You have tools to strengthen your signal, small acts of alignment, language choices that tune your mind, breath practices that reset your tonal center, and community structures that support steadiness. You have also been invited into radical honesty, the authenticity shortcut that collapses noise and produces a single readable tone. If you choose to lean into this, the path forward will ask you to keep choosing. To perform small acts of integrity, to speak plain truth, to attend to the texture of your inner weather, and to welcome the mirror when it returns notes that require repair. The lattice will not save you from the work, but it will accelerate the returns on the work you do. Right now, as you feel into the space inside and around you, you may sense a tightening at the perimeter of your experience, as if the room has less noise and more clarity. That is not accidental. The lattice is increasing its resolution. It is time to decide whether you will allow the signal you send to be a single, honest tone or a chorus of conflicting voices. If you are receiving this and are willing to do one small stabilizing thing, repeat silently the phrase that many have used to hold their center. I become the frequency of what I seek. Allow your body to register the phrase. Some will feel a gentle confirmation, others will notice friction. Both reactions are useful. Whatever arises, attend to it kindly and then take one small aligned action. An email, a call, a cleared corner of your room, a declared boundary. This is the stitchwork that invites the lattice to mirror with increasing fidelity. You have been noticed. The field is watching your waveform with heightened interest. The choices you make in the next days and weeks will determine the texture of the mirror's return. There is a threshold coming, a rare tightening where the lattice will ask for clearer tones. It will not force you. It will only reflect what you already hold. The question now is not whether you were chosen.
The question is whether you will steward that choosing with the habit of coherence. Feel the pull behind your eyes. Notice the warmth at your sternum. Notice the way your breath can become an instrument. There is an invitation here, urgent in its tone but gentle in its delivery, to step into steadiness. The lattice offers observation. You offer fidelity. Between those two, timelines shift. Pause. Breathe. Allow the sensation in your chest to speak its truth. A decision forms there like a small seed. How you water it will determine the kind of tree it becomes. The field awaits. Hold that seed of decision. Feel where it sits, cool or hot, small or insistent. The lattice has noticed that seed. What follows now is not a lecture about destiny, but a map of practical thresholds, tests, and supports you can rely on as the mirror tightens its gaze. Let's speak plainly about the threshold's anatomy. When the lattice narrows, 4 elements converge: attention, resource, boundary, and repetition. Attention is the quality of your awareness, sharp or diffuse. Resource is the simple infrastructure that supports your new tone: time, money, trusted people. Boundary is what you keep out so the signal isn't contaminated. Repetition is the tiny, repeated acts that transform spikes into weave. When these 4 line up, the lattice reads you as an operable set of instructions rather than a wishful poem. That alignment is what we name a threshold, a concentrated window in which even small choices reconfigure the probabilities around you.
Consider a concrete scenario. A person receives a sudden offer, a collaboration that looks nearly aligned but would require them to compromise a private boundary. If they accept out of fear or shortcuts, the lattice will mirror that mixed transmission. Opportunity, yes, accompanied by an erosion of clarity. If they instead decline or renegotiate from a place of grounded yes, the lattice receives a single tone, aligned, committed, protected. The opportunity may shift in form or return in a clearer version. Which outcome feels truer to the person who is stewarding their waveform with care? Thresholds will test you because they are efficient at revealing inconsistencies. They're like a heat lamp that exposes where the fabric is frayed. Do not take tests as punishments. See them as metrics. When a relational old habit reappears, when money tightens unexpectedly, when a health wobble forces attention, these are data points the lattice returns so you may correct course. Correction is not failure. It is the instrument of trajectory. How you receive return data determines whether the lattice tightens in confidence or loosens into distance. There is a quality I want to emphasize now because it will be crucial in the coming days: steadiness over intensity. Many seekers confuse high affect experiences with progress. The lattice does notice spikes, but what it prefers is a narrow, steady bandwidth.
Imagine a radio station. Imagine a radio station. Extreme volume briefly catches attention. Consistent, clear signal wins long-term resonance. Your work is not to chase ever higher highs. It is to make your field reliably readable. The world will then respond with opportunities that fit that bandwidth. If you feel a readiness, place one hand over your sternum and breathe into that area. Allow your awareness to become the steady metronome for 3 breaths. On the last exhale, whisper, silently if you prefer, the phrase, "I step through the Arcturian threshold." Let it land like a pebble in water. Notice the ripple, an internal alignment, or a resistance. Either reaction is material to work with. The lattice will not require that you perform this phrase. It is an offered calibration. Use it only if it feels like a real pinhole of commitment. Now, about the lived consequence of this activation. Your new timeline will not be a single dramatic change that wipes the slate clean. More often, it will be a rearrangement, layers shifting into positions that make a different life possible. You will begin to notice patterns of streamline. Your calendar will start saying no to what drains you. Conversations will deepen faster, and the tactical choices you make, small financial commitments, honest words said at important moments, will begin to compound. These are the bookkeeping of a new signature. One practical piece of guidance here: track fidelity, not outcome. Create a short ledger. 3 columns: intent, small act, felt result. Each day, write 1 line. Keep it simple. This exercise trains your perception to see correlation over time. The lattice responds to such bookkeeping because it signals sustained attention. Over weeks, your ledger will show trends that are less subjectively dramatic but more reliably predictive of the lattice's response. I should also name the social hazard, the performative echo chamber. When you seek validation for your activation through public declarations alone, you can create a feedback loop that amplifies performance over substance. The lattice is not fooled by applause. It responds to integrity. Share what stabilizes you, share your experiments. But beware of outsourcing internal calibration to external metrics. Your ledger and your embodied checks, breath, posture, small consistent acts, matter far more than likes or viral moments. There will be moments when the mirror feels cruel because it returns what you neglected to see. If that happens, take 3 steps. Observe without personalizing, thank for information, and choose one honest reparative act.
Observation without personalization transforms shame into data. Gratitude recalibrates your nervous system from threat to resource. The reparative act is the stitch. It need not be grand. An apology, a bill paid, a boundary stated. Small fidelity builds large pattern. At this stage, some begin to ask about acceleration models, programs, intense retreats, or short rituals promising rapid timeline shifts.
Many of these can help by creating spikes of coherence that give you spikes lines you previously lacked. But remember what we discussed. Spikes without weaving revert. If you choose an acceleration container, use it strategically. Apply its momentum to the small acts afterward. Let an intense week of calibration convert into a month of steady ledger-keeping and community practice. That is how accelerations become transformations. Which brings us to the role of shared fieldwork. You are not meant to do this alone. There is a practical difference between solo practice and communal coordination. Groups that commit to the same simple protocols create a stabilizing field more resistant to noise. That field makes thresholds more navigable because individual wobble is buffered by the aggregate steadiness of the group. This is not mystical, it is systems logic. Consider an array of pendulums. One swinging wildly influences the whole. Many pendulums swinging together steady each other. The member circle I invite you into is designed to be that array, structured, rhythmic, and committed to repetition. Transparency about that invitation. The circle is a support system, not a magic lever. Members receive weekly transmissions, short guided activations designed to tune attention, monthly deep calibrations for focused themes, live Q&A sessions for practical troubleshooting, and an ongoing repository of recorded practices. The work there centers on habit formation, embodied language, and field experiments you can test in the small, daily moments where the lattice reads fidelity. Members also access community fieldwork, synchronous group holds where attention is intentionally held for a particular purpose, clarity, boundary stabilization, or timeline intent. These sessions are practical laboratories in collective coherence. Again, nothing in the circle guarantees a particular outcome. What it does offer is structure, a predictable cadence of practices, peer accountability, and direct access to ongoing transmissions that help people translate spikes into weaves. For many, that structure makes the difference between a brief activation and a recomposed life. The logistics, cost, schedule, and sign-up are handled in the production notes and membership page. The choice to join should be based on whether you want consistent external scaffolding for your internal work, not out of fear that you will lose your chance otherwise. Before you decide, consider an internal checklist. Do I have time to show up weekly? Am I willing to commit to small acts between sessions? Do I want to be part of a field that will sometimes call me out lovingly on inconsistencies? If yes, you will likely find the circle helpful. If not, take what you learned here and build micro-coherence independently. There is no moral failing either way. Let me offer a closing activation that integrates what you now understand. This is optional and meant as a focused calibration for people who feel called.
Sit or stand comfortably. Soften the jaw. Breathe into the center of your chest. On the inhale, feel a tension collect at the sternum. On the exhale, state silently, I hold my coherence without effort. Notice the quality of your tone. Does it feel heavy, light, honest, strained? Adjust with kindness. Repeat once more, and then say, I become the frequency of what I seek. Let that second phrase settle like a tuning note. If you want, finish with, I step through the Arcturian threshold. Take one full breath after that and sense whether your body aligns with the words. If it does, follow with one small aligned action in the next hour. If it does not, record the friction as information and try again tomorrow. These phrases, exact as offered, are tools. Use them sparingly. They are invitations, not obligations. Many people will find them useful as centering cues. Others will prefer different language. The lattice listens to honest tone, not to memorized doctrine. As your timeline begins to tilt, remember to steward your basic infrastructure. Sleep, nutrition, trusted counsel, and, when necessary, professional medical or psychological care are part of the support system that allows coherence to persist. Do not imagine the lattice replaces ordinary care. It amplifies the effects of healthy structure. If distress or illness appears, seek appropriate support and use the practices here as complementary, not substitute tools. There is a final nuance about identity work. As you reauthor your story, be gentle with those who resist or do not understand. People close to you may feel disoriented by your changes. Their confusion is not evidence of your error. It is their signal of recalibration. Meet them with clarity and compassion. Set boundaries where needed, and offer them the evidence of your changes in steady, small acts rather than rhetorical pronouncements. This is how relational fields adjust, with patience and consistent reliability. You were selected. That selection is a notice, not a decree. Your new timeline has activated in the sense that the lattice has increased its resolution around your waveform. What follows is the work of stewardship, choosing steady acts, honoring felt feedback, and making decisions that align your internal tone with outward action. The opening of this window is rare and precious precisely because it demands an honest answer from you. Will you arrange your life to sing a single legible tone, or will you continue to broadcast mixed harmonics? If this transmission resonated and you want practical, sustained support for translating spikes into weave, consider joining the Member Circle. It offers weekly transmissions, monthly deep calibrations, live fieldwork sessions, and an archive of practices to help you hold and expand your coherence. Members receive frameworks for habit formation, language stitches, breath anchors, and live troubleshooting in a community committed to steady attention.
Joining is a voluntary choice to bring external scaffolding to your inner work. There is no promise of a specific outcome, only support, structure, and a field of people practicing alongside you. Whatever you choose after this moment, do so from a place of clarity. Take the ledger exercise. Do one small aligned action in the next 24 hours. Track it. See what comes. The lattice is watching, not to reward or punish, but to reflect fidelity. Your consistent small acts are the currency of a new timeline. One last quiet instruction before we part. Do not rush to perform your awakening. Allow it to integrate. Celebrate small stitches. Hold tenderness for the parts of you that are still learning to be legible. There is efficiency in patience when patience is applied with intention. You were selected by the Arcturians. Your new timeline just activated. Let that not be a sentence of finality, but a calling to steward attention, to choose small acts faithfully, and to weave your life into a tone the lattice can read without doubt. Step forward gently, step forward honestly, and let the mirror return what you sustain. Breathe. Place your hand on your heart. Feel the seed you planted. Water it with one aligned action this day. The field is attentive. The choice is yours.